Well, you are face to face again with a drywaller. That's right, I do drywall. A drywaller that loves athletics, especially the Michigan variety. So, but today we're going to be talking about Big Ten schedules, and I've already done 1 through 6 individually in videos. And in today's video, I'm going to be trying to go through as many of these schedules as I can without screwing up. I do not edit here. I did 4 through 6 were amazing graphics on this channel. Not really. Just a piece of paper, and you guys did not enjoy them as much as the ones where we were face to face. So here we go. Back at it. I am the Dependent Fanatic. Hello, everybody. Number 7 is coming up, and then I hope to do 8, 9, and 10, 11, and 12 to get through the middle portion of the Big Ten Conference as far as schedule difficulty. So here we go. Number 7 is Iowa. They were 10-4 last season. They open up the season at home for 3 games, starting with Illinois State, and I believe this is their first meeting ever. But as far as these meetings go, Winsipedia is a good source for me to look at what the record is and whatnot. I go there and they did not have a page for Illinois State, but that doesn't mean that they haven't played, because Winsipedia has pages for teams that have never played, like Iowa versus Troy, that is coming up in week 3. Anyway, here we go. Let's get started. Iowa plays Illinois State at home. Iowa State at home, 7-6 team from last season. Iowa leads that series 47-23 all time. And then they get Troy at home, an 11-3 team from last season, and it will be their first ever matchup. And then they go on the road at Minnesota, a 6-7 team from last season, and Iowa trails the series versus Minnesota 63-52 and 2 ties. And then they get their first bye week. Every team in the nation gets 2 bye weeks this season. They go from their bye week to Ohio State, and that's a good spot for their first bye. Ohio State was 11-2 last season, and they lead the all-time series 47-15 and 3 ties. Right after that, you get Washington at home, who was the national runner-up last season, 14-1. This series is actually tied all-time 3-3. So that will be an interesting game, because Iowa returning Cade McNamara and what they have and Washington kind of taking a dip, although I love Jedd Fisch as their head coach. Former Michigan offensive coordinator. He is a great pickup for Washington, so that will be interesting to see who wins this game. All these games versus traditional Big Ten teams and the newcomers are going to be awesome to watch. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then at Michigan State, right after that, is what Iowa has, a 4-8 team from last season. Iowa leads this series by 3 games. 25-22 and 2 ties. Right after that, Northwestern, an 8-5 team from last season with a brand new head coach. Iowa leads the series versus Northwestern 54-28 and 3 ties. And then they get Wisconsin at home as well. 7-6 is what Wisconsin went last season. Wisconsin leads the series by 3 games, 49-46 and 2. So a lot of historical matchups going up against Wisconsin. They're trying to even up the score here in some of these. And then their last game before their second bye week is at UCLA, an 8-5 program from last season who just lost their head coach, who is now going to be Ohio State's offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly. They were 8-5 last year. UCLA leads this series 6-3. I'm thinking that Iowa can get that one even though it's on the road before their bye week, depending on injuries and things, of course. But coming out of their bye week, they have 2 games left in the regular season at Maryland, who went 8-5 last season. Iowa leads that series 3-1. And then Nebraska at home, who was a 5-7 team last season, but on the rise under new head coach Matt Rule. They have not made a bowl in a long time, and under Scott Frost. And so now they got 1 more victory from last season. Can they get 6 victories here to make a bowl? But we'll talk about Nebraska's schedule here coming up. Nebraska leads the series versus Iowa 30-21 and 3 ties. Iowa's opponents total from last season adds up to 89-55, which is a 62% win percentage, and that's what Iowa will have to go against. But let's remember that some of these teams will get better, some of these teams will get worse in the upcoming season. That is Iowa's schedule. It's going to be tough. That is number 7 in the Big Ten. If you want to see who was number 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I had a playlist that I created, and I might put it at the end of this video if I can figure out how to put a playlist on an end screen. I will do that for you. But otherwise, you can go to my channel, Dependent Fanatic, and click on the playlist, Big Ten Toughest Schedules or something like that. So next up is number 8 in the Big Ten, and that is Minnesota. Minnesota went 6-7 last season. They opened the season with North Carolina, a team they had never played before until last season, in which they lost to North Carolina. So they are 0-1 versus them. North Carolina went 8-5 last season. They get them at home. Rhode Island is a team I believe that they have never played before, an FCS team, so they do not. Their schedule does not count. I do not count FCS teams in the opponent totals at the end. So it is what it is. They're just not a team that is worthy of, it's like playing a 0-12 team in my opinion. Even though some of them FCS teams are good. We know it. Well, as Michigan fans, some can pull off the upset, of course, but I don't think Rhode Island is going to versus Minnesota here in week 2. Week 3, Minnesota has Nevada, a 2-10 team from last season, and this is their first ever matchup in history. So I expect Minnesota possibly to go 3-0 in the upcoming beginning of the season. Then they get Iowa at home, a 10-4 team from last season. Minnesota leads 63-52 all time. So Iowa was first, Minnesota, and then another major used to be Big Ten West team are all in order here in the middle of the Big Ten schedule difficulty, and they all play each other. So that'll be interesting. Next up for Minnesota is at Michigan. Yours truly, the reigning national champs, 15-0 last season. Michigan leads this series 77-25 and 3 ties. USC is next at home, 8-5 team from last season. USC leads that series 6-1. At UCLA, an 8-5 team. You got 3 8-5 teams in a row with a bye week in between. UCLA is 8-5. Minnesota leads this series 2-1, actually, believe it or not. And then you get your bye week right after that, Minnesota. Maryland is 8-5. Coming out of that bye week, you get them at home. And Maryland leads this series 4-3. So Minnesota has, under PJ Fleck, has underwhelmed throughout his tenure. He's had some good seasons, but time to break through. It's hard in the Big Ten, of course. But at Illinois, right after that, 5-7 team, Brett Bielema has that team on the, last year they had a good season. In his first season, then they missed a bowl. What will he do? But he's a great coach. Minnesota leads against Illinois 40-33 and 3 ties all time. At Rutgers is next for Minnesota, 7-6 team. Minnesota leads 3-0 in this series, but Rutgers, when did they join? What was that, 2011? So you haven't played them very much. Of course, they've been opposite divisions, but now the Big Ten has no divisions at all, and they will pick the best 2 teams. However that is going to be, I don't know, because strength of schedule should matter if you're trying to pick 2 teams from 18 that are playing each other. Suppose a couple are playing the best teams and a couple are not, but the couple that don't have the better record, like a certain team, Ohio State, that isn't even in this middle portion of Big Ten schedule difficulty. So you get your bye week after Rutgers, Minnesota does, and Penn State is at home for them, a 10-3 team from last season. Penn State leads this series 10-6. And then you're at Wisconsin, a 7-6 team. Wisconsin leads this series 63-62-8. It's only a 1-game difference there. The opponent totals for Minnesota are 88-56 from last season, which is a 61% win percentage. And that is number 8 on the difficulty list. Number 9 is Wisconsin. Another familiar foe from these previous 2 teams. Wisconsin was 7-6 last year under Luke Fickell in his first season. Western Michigan is their first opponent, who went 4-8 last season. Wisconsin leads this series 4-1. Should be a win. South Dakota is at their first meeting. I tried to figure it out, but I could not figure it out. I think it's their first meeting ever. Wisconsin should win. Alabama. You get Alabama at home now, a Nick Saban-less Alabama. They went 12-2 last season. I'm guessing that they can maintain that production in the SEC, but I'm guessing they're going to drop off a little bit. Can you get them at home early? That would be huge for the Big Ten. And then, of course, the series is tied all time, 1-1. Alabama lost last one in 2015, so they had the latest win in this series. And then a bye week right after that. Before you go to USC, it was an 8-5 team last season. USC leads this series 6-1. Purdue is going to be a win for you at home, 4-8. Wisconsin leads this series 53-29 and 8 ties all time. Wow. At Rutgers, a 7-6 team. I love Greg Schiano. I love what he's doing with Rutgers. Both times he's been there. Wisconsin leads that series, though, 5-0. At Northwestern, so 2 road games in a row right here, an 8-5 team from last season. Wisconsin leads this series 62-38 and 5 ties. And then Penn State, you get to come home, but you have Penn State. A 10-3 season last season for them. Penn State leads the all-time series with Wisconsin 11-9. So that is close. And then at Iowa, a 10-4 team right after that. Wisconsin leads that series by 3, 49-46 and 2. And then a bye week right after that before a newcomer comes to town in Madison, Wisconsin, and that is Oregon, a 12-2 team from last season's. This series is tied 3-3 all time. Oregon won the last 3. Wisconsin won the first 3, guessing way back in the day. Oregon is owning this series lately. Wisconsin's going to have to change that if they want to improve on their 7-6 record from last season. And then at Nebraska was a 5-7 team, and Wisconsin leads that series 13-4. Minnesota is who they end the season with at home, a 6-7 team from last season. Wisconsin leads that series by 1, 63-62-8, which we already mentioned earlier for the Minnesota portion of this video. So Wisconsin's opponent total is 86-57, which is a 60% win percentage. As we move on here, I'm going to have to take a drink. And that's what that's all about. Reigning national champions as well. Here we go. Who's next? Who is number 10? That would be Michigan State, a 4-8 team from last season. Florida Atlantic is who you open up with, a 4-8 team. MSU leads that series 3-0. Then at Maryland, an 8-5 team. MSU leads 10-4. Now for the remainder of this video, I'm gonna stop saying Big Ten teams' records unless I've already said them. You already know it. I'm just gonna tell you the series history, and we'll go from there. All right. Prairie View A&M, an FCS team. I think it's their first meeting. You'll obliterate it. At Boston College. Boston College is 7-6 from last season, and they lead this series over Michigan State 4-1 and 1 tie. Ohio State at home is next, an 11-2 team. Ohio State leads the series 37-15. And then Michigan State gets Oregon on the road, 12-2 team from last season. Oregon leads 4-3 in this series all time. And then it's your bye week. And out of your bye week, you're lucky you have that bye week right in the middle, because Iowa is next, a 10-4 team. A team that went to the Big Ten championship game last season. Yes, they were divisions, but they were there. And Iowa leads. I mean, even without an offense, supposedly they'll have an offense this year. Iowa leads 25-22 and 2. And then at Michigan, who was reigning national champs, of course, Michigan leads 73-38 and 5 is what the record is there versus little brother. Indiana is at home for Michigan State, a 3-9 team. Michigan leads 50-18-2, and then you get your second bye week before you go to Illinois, a 5-7 team. Michigan State leads 27-19 and 2 ties, and then you get Purdue, and then Rutgers at home, a 4-8 team and a 7-6 team. Michigan State leads both. They lead over Purdue 36-29 and 3 ties, and they lead over Rutgers 10-5. Their opponent record is 86-57, which is a 60% win percentage. Listen, Sparty, if you can win early and late, you will make a bowl. You will miss a bowl if you can't win those games, because in the middle is Ohio State at Oregon, Iowa at Michigan. I think you lose all them. That's going to be brutal. So here we go. That was number 10. Number 11, most difficult schedule in the Big Ten, belongs to Illinois, a 5-7 team from last season. They get Eastern Illinois at home, and Illinois leads that series 2-0. Kansas is at home as well after they went down to Kansas and lost last year. Kansas was 9-4 last year. The series is tied 3-3. Central Michigan at home, 5-7. It's the first ever matchup between these two programs. And at Nebraska is your fourth game, 5-7. Nebraska leads this series 14-6 and 1 tie. At Penn State leads this series 21-6. And then you get your bye week after 5 games to start the season consecutively. Illinois gets Purdue out of their bye week, 4-8 from last season. Purdue leads this series, actually, 48-45 and 6 ties. And then you get Michigan at home right after that. Michigan leads the series 72-23 and 2. At Oregon, right after Michigan, is going to be very difficult. 12-2 team from last season. Oregon leads 2-1 all time. Minnesota at home, 6-7 team. Minnesota leads 40-33 and 3 ties, and then you get your second bye week before Michigan State at home. Michigan State leads the series on Illinois 27-19 and 2, as we just discussed in the previous breakdown for Michigan State. At Rutgers and then at Northwestern is where Illinois ends up, and that could make or break their bowl season. Rutgers was 7-6 last season. Illinois leads that series 5-3, and Northwestern was 8-5 last season, and Illinois leads that series by 2 games, 57-55, and 5 ties. Their opponent total is 87-57 from last season, a 60% win percentage. You get both Michigan schools at home, and the first 3 games should be wins for Brett Bielema. But seriously, you have to beat 3 of these teams: Nebraska, Purdue, Minnesota, Rutgers, or Northwestern, and then beat Kansas as well to go bowling, in my opinion, for Illinois. The last team on this video before I do in another video, the bottom 3 difficult schedules in the Big Ten, which means it's an easier path for those teams, is Indiana. They are number 12 difficulty rank. 3-9 last season. They get FIU at home, a 4-8 team. Indiana leads 3-0 in the series. Western Illinois is an FCS team. Is it their first meeting? I think if it is, they got 3 teams in a row where they've never played them ever in history before, so that'll be interesting. The next one is at UCLA, 8-5 team. Like I said, their first ever matchup. Charlotte, a 3-9 team, first ever matchup. Then they get Maryland at home. Indiana leads this series 7-5. And at Northwestern, who was an 8-5 team last season, I keep saying that, it's impressive. It's impressive for Northwestern with a first-time head coach from last season. And Northwestern actually has the second most difficult schedule in the nation. I'll just go ahead and tell you that right now. Go watch the video. Look at it. It's amazing. Northwestern leads this series versus Indiana 47-35 and 1 tie. And then Indiana gets their bye week. So they have 6 games before their first bye week. Nebraska, coming out of their time off, was 5-7 last season. Indiana leads that series, believe it or not, versus Nebraska 10-9, and there were 3 ties. Washington at home. Indiana leads that series 2-1. I never would have thought that either. Wow. At Michigan State after that, Michigan State leads the series 50-18-2, and then it's Michigan at home. They get them at home, but Michigan leads that series 62-10. And then your second bye week before you have at Ohio State. Good timing for that. Ohio State looking to improve this season. They've always been second best for the last 3 seasons and first best since forever before that. Ohio State leads this series versus Indiana 79-12 and 5. I don't see how you go there and beat those guys. And then Purdue, a 4-8 team from last season. Purdue leads the series versus Indiana and state rivals 77-42-6. So a wide margin there. Indiana's opponent totals are 84-58, which is 59% winning percentage. So we're dipping here a little bit for the last third of these difficulty ranking amongst Big Ten teams. So thank you all for tuning in. Like the video. What do you think? Do I have a team lower, higher? How do you think it should go? We need some more interaction here on the Dependent Fanatic channel. Give me your comments, and I'll try to comment back to you. Thank you, and have a great day out there, and good luck to all these 6 teams and the 6 teams I've already done. So here we go. The next video I think will be in the same format, be about 24 or 30 minutes long, somewhere in there. And it will include the bottom 3 schedules in the Big Ten, the easiest schedules. So that will be coming up. Of course, I cover Michigan hockey. Michigan basketball, not so much anymore. Like Tanner Wooten said on Mark Rogers' channel earlier today, I don't even know that they have a team this year. Just, you stay over there, and I'm going to celebrate what is going on over here. And that's where we're at there with Joanne Howard. But anyway, thanks. Have a great night, everybody.